Hey guys, what's up? My name is Fox and welcome to another video of mine. This video will be my first real guide for the Paladin class in Lost Ark. I have been playing Paladin for 8 months now, cleared nearly every content possible on my Paladin in Russia, and am also currently item level 1527, putting me at rank 15 in Russia regarding gear score. Over these 8 months I experimented a lot on my Paladin, played it in many different ways and gathered a massive amount of information regarding skill choices, tripods, engravings and much more. In this video I will try to cover literally everything possible about the Paladin and hopefully answer any questions you have regarding this class. So let's start with a TLDR for the Paladin. The Paladin is a support class in Lost Ark and offers a lot of shielding, buffing, healing and debuffing. His playstyle is a mix of melee and ranged with some additional casts here and there. The role of the Paladin in the raid is to keep his party members alive as much as possible, buff their damage output and generally just make them feel safe if they make mistakes. You are also responsible for landing as many counters as possible, stagger checks and destruction checks. Basically, you are the backbone of your party, helping with everything in every aspect besides your own damage. While doing damage to the target, you generate gauge in the middle of your screen, and once it is full, you get access to 2 different abilities. One being your Blast Aura, which increases the damage output of your teammates by at least 10% while active, or the Judgment, which is a selfish version increasing your own damage. Yes, you mostly use Blast Aura on the Paladin. If you want more information of the basic playstyle, I suggest you to check out my In a Nutshell video, because this video is way more in depth for optimizing and not really a TLDR of its playstyle. Now let's cover all the skills the Paladin has. For the skill coverage section, I will be going over all of them, give you my thoughts on the skills and also talk about tripods and what is possible or situational to run. So let's start with Spin Slash, which is a fast, low cooldown damage skill that is decent while leveling. In general, this skill does not find any use in any build because it offers no utility, it only has damage. However, due to that, it is possible to run it for Chaos Dungeon builds or DPS Paladin builds. Regarding the tripod choices, I would suggest to run Vital Point Strike since you usually have low critical chance on Paladin, Law of the Jungle for Chaos Dungeon and Strength Release for DPS build, and lastly, Chain Attack to amplify your damage the most. Overall, I give this skill a 3 out of 10 because it is mostly never ever used and you probably also should not use it. Flash Thrust on the other hand is a bit better. You execute a fast row of attacks with your sword and inflict damage. Again though, this skill has basically no utility besides some super armor, which is obviously not bad. Overall, Flash Thrust, if used on cooldown, is one of the highest damage skills the Paladin has, which is why you see it being run in some hybrid builds or in DPS builds. I personally do not recommend it for Chaos Dungeon, but it's good for DPS builds. The tripods of my choice would be Quick Preparation, Chain Attack and Flash Enhancement. I personally rate this skill 4 out of 10 because again, we are not a DPS class, so it's mostly useless. On to our first yellow skill, which is Light Shock, and honestly is one of the best skills we could ask for. Light Shock becomes already full efficient at only level 7 due to the Light's Vestige tripod. This tripod inflicts a debuff on the target to increase its damage taken by your party members by 10%. Keep this in mind because this will be important. You will find that this skill is part of nearly every single build we'll make since it's so good and only again needs to be at level 7 to reach its maximum potential already. It has massive utility with the Vestige debuff and simply is part of the Paladin's core of abilities. Lastly, it is also extremely fast with the Swift Fingers tripod and has a low cooldown to keep up the debuff at all times. I personally rate this skill a 9 out of 10 because it is so good but can also be replaced by something else, as we will see later in the video. Light of Judgment makes the Paladin fire a beam to inflict damage. This skill is a bit of a weird one because I do think it's decent, yet I also think it's situational. Light of Judgment also comes with 1 stagger, but the real deal that interests us here is the Faith tripod at level 7. This means you gain increased gauge for using this skill. You are able to run this skill in certain setups and it is also really good then to simply generate gauge. Regarding the tripods, I suggest to run Swift Fingers in normal cases. Both Enhanced Strike and Magic Control are also viable, but for hard content, Swift Fingers is by far the best one. At level 7, we obviously choose the Faith tripod for gauge increase. And lastly, personally, I recommend Righteous Light for an instant cast because holding down this skill feels really bad in hard content. In easier content, you can go with either of the two. Please note, gauge generation is the same for both tripods. I personally rate this skill a 7 out of 10 due to it having nearly no utility besides the increase in gauge regen. Now on to our first basically must use, the charge. Yeah, we simply use the charge skill for mobility, to reposition or to dodge something. Overall, you can get away with only level 4 of this skill, where you then can choose extra mobility for further range or quick preparation, which is up to you. If you have too many points, you can always get it to level 7 and also add Shining Protection to have an on-demand shield if you find yourself in a bad situation. I rate this skill must run out of 10 because I literally never not use this unless I'm in a Chaos dungeon. Next up is Sword of Justice, which is another skill that is rather questionable. It does have the Summon Holy Sword tripod, which is the same as the Vestige tripod, increasing damage taken by the target, which makes it a viable choice. Yet there's one big issue. As you might see, this skill is quite slow and has also casting time. If the target moves out of your cast, well, you're left empty-handed. I also don't see any use for this skill in Chaos Dungeons or DPS builds, so to put it simply, I don't recommend this skill. If you really want to use it for the debuff, you can run the following tripods: Insight, Summon Holy Sword and Dazzling Light Sword to then increase the duration of the debuff. Personal rating for me is around 3 or 4 out of 10 since they're simply better options to get the job done. Flash Slash is another skill that honestly has barely any usage outside of DPS Paladin builds or Chaos Dungeon builds if you feel like it. The skill is a succession of sword hits that take quite long to execute. I've played around with this skill frequently since I really like it on paper, but in a raid setting honestly it isn't that great. The damage is fine, but as it should be obvious, the Paladin is a support, so we don't really have any usage for this. If you do decide to run this skill as a DPS Paladin, I would suggest the following tripods: Nimble Movement, Strength Release and Changed Swordcraft. I rate it only 2 out of 10 since it's slow and honestly doesn't feel good at all. Holy Explosion is a yellow skill and is again very situational. The Paladin creates a big AoE with an explosion that damages the foes. It has quite some cast time but offers us the Light's Vestige debuff again, which makes it kinda useful. It comes with decent stagger and also some destruction, aka part breaking, and that is the only reason to ever run it over any other light vestige skill. If you find yourself in a raid that requires a lot of part breaking, you can use this skill. It is though again very situational. I personally also suggest it for Chaos Dungeons. Tripod wise, you want to use Swift Fingers, Light's Vestige and Explosion Aftermath to keep up the Vestige debuff. Obviously for Chaos Dungeons the tripods would change. I overall rate this skill a solid 6 out of 10 because it has niche uses and is not completely useless. On to our next blue skill called Punishment. Simply put, you strike the target with some sword blows. This skill honestly is really good depending on the situation. It has decent stagger, part breaker and is also a frontal skill, increasing the stagger. Now what makes it so good are the tripod choices we get. When using it for utility, you run it with Concussion, Piercing Sword and Double Smite, which is what really makes it shine. Basically, Double Smite applies both stagger and part breaking twice, and Concussion increases that stagger even. This skill is literally utility all in one. This doesn't mean we're going to run it every raid, but I find myself going back to Punishment very frequently or as soon as my group meets a stagger or destruction check. It is also a good choice for DPS Paladin builds. I personally rate this skill an 8 out of 10 since it still remains situational but is nearly a must-have for a lot of raids. Next up we have Holy Land, which is a skill that I see literally everyone recommend and I simply disagree with that. Holy Land is a very underwhelming skill. What it does is simply put, it creates an aura on the floor where your teammates receive 20% to 30% less damage and you damage the target while getting some gauge out of it. On paper, this skill sounds really good, but in reality I believe it to be pretty bad. Reason for that is that your DPS will simply put never move into this. Some will have effects disabled, others simply won't care about it, or rather most won't care about it. So you technically just cast this behind the boss to get most melees into it, but your range will still not be in it. Now that is not the issue, but on top of that, if the boss moves, your puddle becomes a puddle of tears. Now why am I being so harsh regarding this skill? Simply put, because it tries to do everything at once, but nothing really properly. It's a good skill for a casual paladin player because it's easy to use, but that's about it. There's so many other skills that just provide more of what Holy Land tries to provide. So in general, I only advise to use this skill if you are playing paladin as an alt or rather more casual or just don't really care that much. Tripods you use would be Quick Preparation, Grace, and Endless Grace. I know some people will disagree with my take on this skill, but that's just how I feel about it. The 20 to 30% damage reduction simply is not worth it. It will never save your teammates, nor will it make any difference, to be honest. Therefore, I rate it 5 out of 10 because I believe it can be used if you feel like it, but I think it's overrated and not that great. Now on to probably the most useless skill in our kit, the dash slash. I just don't use this ever, to be honest. I have seen some people that use it, and I believe you can use it instead of the charge. But I don't know, honestly, if you rather use this over the charge skill, go for it. That's all there is to say to this. Next up, one of our big boy mandatory skills, the Holy Protection. What a godlike skill. Not only do you give out a shield, but at the end of the shield, when it expires, you also heal your party members for 8% of your maximum health. And good lord, this 10 out of 10 skill is simply a must use at all times. You never not run this. Well, unless you're doing Chaos Dungeons or playing DPS Paladin. But get this, you also get a cleanse for free with this skill, which is amazing and makes you better than Bard. Yeah, suck on this, Bard mains. Tripod wise, we use Quick Pace, Purify, and Vow of Light. Now if this wouldn't be enough, we get more shields. Godsend Law is another absolutely amazing skill and is on my nearly mandatory to run list. The Paladin creates an AoE that shields all allies in it and reduces their damage taken by 70. Yes, you heard that right, 70%. This is your oh shit button or your I'ma save your ass button. Yes, it's an absolutely amazing skill. On top of that, it also has the brilliant Law Tripod, allowing you to apply the Vestige debuff. It's an all-in-one skill like Holy Land, but better. This skill should be on your hotbar no matter what, to be honest. Yet you can use it in different ways. You can either use it, like I said earlier, as an oh shit button to save someone, or as a constant debuff applier while shielding your mates that stand in it. Tripod wise, I'd go for the shield, brilliant Law or wide angle, depending on what you want, and lastly the Grace Tripod. 10 out of 10, easy peasy, go next. Which now again brings me to another nearly mandatory skill, the Executor's Sword. The Paladin strikes in the direction of the cursor and can perform a counterattack with this skill. But not only that, you also have Stagger and Part Breaking. Crazy, right? This is another amazing skill, and if you run any blue skills, this is your third go-to blue skill. Like I said, it's a damage skill with massive Stagger and Part Breaking and an opportunity to counter. Also a decent skill in general for Chaos Dungeons and DPS Paladin builds. Most tripods here are actually viable, so it's up to you what you choose depending on what is required for the content that you're doing. And we simply can't be stopped with good skills right now, because next up is Wrath of God, which is another amazing skill that buffs our teammates' damage and on top of that generates massive gauge. Simply put, a must run. And here are your tripods: White, Thunderstroke, Faith, and Express Fury. You can literally run this in any content on any build and it will be strong. Moving on to Execution of Justice, a very situational skill. The Paladin simply spins to win and then does damage. As you might expect from the animation already, this is a skill we run in Chaos Dungeon and only in Chaos Dungeon, nowhere else. It's also good while leveling. For tripods we use Rune Prison, Strength Release, and whichever you prefer of the last two. Remember, Chaos Dungeon is a fun zone and you can run what you enjoy. I rate this skill a 5 out of 10 because it is good for Chaos Dungeon, but nothing else. Soon we're done, but we're going to go out with a bang. Here's our last blue skill and literally our best blue skill. Holy Sword makes the Paladin lunge forward to hit the target and then extends his sword to deal damage. And this skill nearly has it all. Decent stagger and a massive range counter. You can nearly counter from across the map with this skill. It's disgusting. But also really important, this skill is really big damage. It is by far our highest damage skill, so a must run in my opinion in any content you are doing. Tripods depend on what you are doing, so let's go over them real quick. Positioning is useful if you are playing the standard full support playstyle, while Stigmata is the go-to tripod for DPS Paladin or Chaos Dungeon. In the second row, Outburst of Light is again the go-to as tripod for supports. Weak point detection for DPS build and Vital Point Strike for Chaos Dungeons. Lastly, Condensed Energy is only used as DPS Paladin, while Release Light is our go-to for any other build or content. 10 out of 10 skill, literally always run this. And last but not least, Heavenly Blessings, another buff just like Wrath of God, making it mandatory for any build in any situation. Please make sure to not overlap these two buffs because it's bad because they don't stack. So spread out the two buffs to have as much uptime on them as possible. In terms of tripods, we go for Faith, Valor for damage, and Absolute Blessing to even give out some mana regen to our teammates. And with that, we're done with our standard skills. Before we move on, a few words on our two ultimates. Alithan's Judgment is a huge AoE shield to our party and inflicts damage onto the target while giving us nice gauge. It is the go-to ultimate for the Paladin as a support. If you are playing DPS Paladin or Chaos Dungeons, you can run Alithan's Light instead. Now, on a side note, you will have to finish a 4-hour-long Awakening questline from Rohendel to get access to Alithan's Judgment, which sucks, but someone's gotta do it. Yeah, you gotta do it. Thank you for doing it. Now it's time to go over skill builds. Paladin is quite special in this case because we have so many viable skills that we can use and adapt towards the situation we find ourselves in, which makes us so versatile and so good. For a leveling build, please head over to my leveling build video. I won't repeat that in this video. This part of the video is going over pure support builds and not anything else. Later on, I will talk about Hybrid Paladin and DPS Paladin. You can use the timestamps if that is something of interest to you. For a pure support build, we need to first take our 4 mandatory skills, which are going to be Charge, Holy Protection, and our 2 buffs, Wrath of God and Heavenly Blessing. Now, half of our build is already done without even getting to choose anything. Yet, our 4 next skills are basically a checklist of what we need to go through to determine what skills to use. First up, and the most important choice, is that we have a Vestige debuff skill. So we can choose one of the 4 possible choices, whereas the more common ones are definitely Light Shock or Godsend Law. But this step already determines a lot. If you are playing with Light Shock, I still suggest you to run Godsend Law at the same time, making us use 2 skill slots. Both though can apply the Vestige debuff with a full uptime depending on your swiftness. Yet when using Godsend's Law, you get a free slot for something else. I honestly believe this is up to your preference, so we basically now split our choices, one with both of them leaving us room for 2 more skills, or only one when we use also Godsend's Law. Next step is then to simply use our 2 blue best skills, which are again the Holy Sword and the Executor Sword. I personally perceive them as too good to not run them. So now for one of our 2 builds we reached our 8 skills, yet the other build still has a slot open. And this is a Joker slot. You can now decide what you want to run. I personally run Light of Judgment to increase my gauge region as much as possible to be able to heal and buff my allies faster. But since we went over our other skills before, it is up to you what you want to run. Lastly, here are some suggestions from me depending on needs for stagger or destruction. I really suggest you to familiarize yourself with the mechanics of the game and Paladin to then make your own choices. Now in terms of rotation or playstyle for the Paladin, it is actually quite simple. We have a few rules that we follow and then we're set. Number 1, make sure to keep up your Vestige debuff at all time to increase the damage your party does. Number 2, make sure to spread out your 2 buffs and use them as much as possible on cooldown without overlapping. Number 3, use your Holy Protection on cooldown. And number 4, counter or impair as necessary. and voila, it is that simple. We have no real rotation, we simply have our priorities to keep up, to keep track of, and make sure to save someone's ass with your godsend law. Now then, let's simply go over what stats do for us. In general, as always, talking from a support perspective, you want to definitely prioritize grabbing swiftness as much as possible. Reason being is that swiftness allows you to move faster and have shorter cooldowns. This is crucial for the Paladin to increase their usage of buffs and heals as much as possible. The contender to swiftness is specialization, which increases the effectiveness of our blessed aura, which honestly is really nice, increases gauge gain and also the damage of our awakening. Yet I do believe swiftness is the go-to, just because it offers us more than specialization. So you want to opt for as much swiftness as possible and getting specialization on your necklace. If you decide to play DPS Paladin for some reason, you want to grab crit. And that's about it. Now it's time to talk about another really important aspect of the game in general, engravings. Mind you, most of this can also be applied for Bard and probably in the future for Artist. Regarding engravings, I have to admit I feel like we have a lackluster choice for supports. We basically get to use 3 mandatory engravings and the rest is honestly just okay. Now let's first talk about the mandatory ones. First up is the class engraving Blessed Aura. Blessed Aura gives your skill an additional effect besides increasing the damage of your party. It decreases their damage taken by 20% and heals them for 2% of their maximum HP every 1.5 seconds. And that is honestly pretty insane. As you might know, the Blessed Aura range is really big, which means it's pretty easy to have your team stand in it. The damage reduction and the heal on top of the damage buff is simply too good to pass on. So make this one of your priorities for your Paladin. Next up is the Awakening engraving, which reduces the cooldown of your Awakening and increases its usage limit. Why is this so good? Not only do you get a massive shield for your allies more often, but you also generate much more gauge. You can get nearly a full gauge by using this ultimate. So seriously, this engraving is really going on the mandatory list. And lastly, which the Paladin honestly also really needs, is the Specialist engraving. It, to simply put it, increases the output of your heals and the size of your shields. This engraving gives us Paladins the last remaining touch to really make us shine in Lost Ark. And that's basically it. Now with these engravings, your Paladin is more than ready and you don't need to push for more. Obviously, if you main Paladin though, and you want to clear high-end content with your group, you should push for more. But what exactly is there to use besides the engravings listed? So let's have a short look at the ones that I see the most commonly used. Sadly, the first one on this list is the heavy armor. But let me tell you, you don't need heavy armor. What it does is simply increases your resistances so you take less damage. I already without heavy armor take barely any damage, which is because the Paladin has extremely high base defense and also doesn't run grudge obviously. I do not suggest to run heavy armor, but I want to mention it because if you simply play Paladin as an alt character and want to brain AFK while doing so, this engraving is good. But if you consider yourself a Paladin main, please stay away from it. Another commonly run engraving is Spirit Absorption. It is similar to heavy armor, but I believe it is better because it increases your movement speed and your casting or attack speed, which allows you to counter faster and stagger faster or destroy faster. You also get to dodge easier and whatnot. I do run this as my 5th engraving currently because I believe it is a very nice quality of life increase. Do I suggest it though? Only as a 5th engraving personally, because you probably are already maxing out your movement speed due to agility or swiftness, so it is not very optimal unless you really don't know what else to run. I know it is weird to start with 2 engravings that I don't really suggest, but hey, they are very popular across Paladins and that's why I wanted to touch on them first. Now, if you actually want to get in some more utility for your team, you can run Vital Point Strike. This engraving increases your stagger effectiveness by crazy 36%. This is what you're born for. You can make impairment checks with this basically by yourself, or you can run a different skill because you still bring more stagger with the other skills. It is absolutely massively useful in content with stagger checks, but also in other content because you will simply stagger and down the guardian or boss faster with this engraving. Lots of legion raids like the clown or Abrelshoot have a lot of impair checks, and I feel like this engraving really starts to shine there. Another rather interesting or useful engraving is the drops of ether. What it does is that it drops small auras that can be picked up by your teammates and give them a buff. This buff can be a crit buff, attack power buff, defense buff, mana regen or movement speed buff. Overall on paper, this also sounds really nice, but I often found myself very frustrated because my teammates simply wouldn't pick them up. And so I would yell at them. But pinging also is pretty bad. You know, you could ping on the map to show them there is an ether, but that's really bad because you don't want to spam pinging raids for something this small and unimportant. In the end, you can also opt for some mana engraving, but since you have an inbuilt mana regen, this usually is not needed. Lastly, the only other engraving that I could see being useful is the Crushing Fist. What it does is that it simply increases the damage taken by your target by 8% after you counted it properly. This is an extremely small buff and it is not really that useful, but I don't even know what else to suggest. Anything else, honestly, are just selfish engravings and don't really serve any good purpose. If you find yourself asking what you should run, you can always run the Judgment level 1 engraving, not to increase the damage of your blue skills, but simply to increase the gauge generation that you get from your blue skills. That is the only other engraving that has some form or use that contributes to yourself and to your gauge generation, making it also a kind of supportive engraving for your group. Now that we have gone over skills, stats and engravings and you know everything, I will now help you with your choices for tier 1 aka EU NA launch. For engravings, the answer should be obvious. You want to definitely max out the Awakening and then get level 3 of either Blessed Aura or Specialist. Lastly, get level 1 or level 2 of the one you didn't choose yet. Whatever you choose to go for is up to you, and honestly, it doesn't matter that much. Again, you also want to focus on swiftness for tier 1 as much as possible, but you can also get away with specialization because the difference in tier 1 will not matter that much. Skill build wise, I will link a build for a fresh level 50 in the description because we have access to only limited skill points at the start and you want to make sure to get the most out of your kit. Now, one thing I didn't yet talk about are the cards, because they didn't matter on Russia for the new players, but they will definitely matter for the final version now. Now, I don't know the names of these card sets for our version yet, so I will be simply displaying them on the screen. There are basically 4 card sets that I personally consider useful on supports. Number 1, which is the go-to set and super decent already, is the World Boss set, which simply put increases your max HP. More max HP means more heal from Holy Protection since it relies on your max HP. Another set is the Tortoise card set, which increases healing for you from your own spells and your potions. You can combine this with the Shushire card set to make you take reduced damage once you are below a certain threshold of HP. Lastly, this is more of a joke, but if you ever reach the level 30 Borea Castle set, you can go for that, since it increases the light damage of your allies by 3.5%, which is a really good synergy with the History of the Ark set that every DPS should be aiming for at endgame. Now, the main part of this guide is pretty much over. I will now shortly talk about having Paladin as an alt class, hybrid Paladin, DPS Paladin, and answer one of the most common questions, which is about soloing content on the Paladin. So, you want to have an alt Paladin. Very good choice. If you simply want to play an alt Paladin to be efficient in terms of gold and help you fill your raid groups, here's my personal suggestion of engravings. Again, always we have our holy trinity of Awakening, Blessed Aura and Specialist, but then I suggest following it up with heavy armor as you want to save up as much gold as possible and not sip any potions. In terms of skill choice, I would advise to go with the most supportive and easy to use one, which is the one I will be displaying on the screen right now. These skills offer a lot of utility and are really simple and straightforward to use. Please do not run any DPS skills, because if you don't plan on spending big chunks of gold or money on your Paladin, you will be more useless than a bonfire. Now, another thing I see sometimes being mentioned is the infamous hybrid Paladin. Basically, it is, can I play with 4 blue skills and have more fun? Of course you can. Is it good? Not really. The reason why this is simply put not good is because you're trying to do everything but you do nothing well. You are supposed to run support engravings, so you cannot fit in any DPS engravings, and if you do, you basically are playing a DPS Paladin, so why even bother? So simply put, Hybrid Paladin is the worst Paladin you can play. If you want to run 4 blue skills, I suggest running the following ones because they offer also utility while giving you the impression that you are doing damage, but trust me, you're not. Now on to the most debated Paladin topic, which is the infamous DPS Paladin. I have looked into this. I checked Korean resources like Inven, I checked Discords, I really checked a lot. And I really tried to find as much info as possible on this topic. And to put it simply, we're not asking how good is DPS Paladin, we're asking how bad is it. DPS Paladin is especially bad in tier 1 and tier 2. This is due to the fact that we have no access to tripods, no high crit rates, and no artifact sets. You will simply do no damage with it, none whatsoever. So please don't even try it. Now once we are in tier 3, basically what the Japanese server recently got into, DPS Paladin becomes somewhat okay. I'm not going to say it's good because it isn't. To simply put it, you will never do as much damage on a DPS Paladin as you would on an evenly geared standard DPS. Now, does that mean you can never play DPS Paladin? No, it doesn't. If you really want to play DPS Paladin, you can do so, but you have to be ready to pump an absolute maximum amount of resources into that Paladin and also be ready to be declined by many parties. In the Korean version of Reddit, aka Inven, I've read a lot of posts about people complaining about DPS Paladin. They say that you need to have a higher weapon level than others, you need to have more engravings, more tripods and whatnot. You really need to optimize it to the maximum. I suggest that if you want to play DPS Paladin, to get yourself a guild or group of friends that is okay with accepting you, because pugging on it will be a disaster, but you can experience this for yourself until you outgear the current content massively. Simply put, if you are planning on playing DPS Paladin, please roll a different class until much later into the game. Thank you from everyone. Lastly, a question I get surprisingly often, which is about solo content on the Paladin. Can I do solo content? Is leveling hard? And honestly, there is not much solo content. Let's go over it really quickly. For leveling, the Paladin is pretty much as fast as any other class, to be honest. It probably is even faster than Gunlance, if I'm honest with you. So you don't have to worry about leveling. The only content which I could see it being an issue is the towers. You can only have 3 towers available on Russia, and I'm pretty sure a full support Paladin would still have trouble clearing the latest tower, but lucky for you, they're easily clearable on DPS. So having 1 DPS already as an alt will be sufficient to clear them and get the rewards. So yes, while indeed the Paladin has problems clearing the towers, nothing else really strikes me as an issue. And the towers are such a small part of the game that I wouldn't let it throw me off of playing this class at all. And wow, we're done! This was quite a lot, but I hope it wasn't too long, guys, and I hope you didn't fall asleep. Now, I do mostly hope that this was helpful. I tried to share the knowledge that I gathered over the last 8 or 9 months of me playing Paladin and make it easier for you to know what you're doing once NAEU releases. I also hope that you will stick with it because this class is so much fun. If there is still anything unclear after this video, feel free to comment below. If you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like and share it with your friends who want to play Paladin too. Thank you so much for watching. Wishing you a great rest of your day, wherever you live. It's from the If Guys song. Yo, I did it, man! Let's fucking go, man! Carry it, dudes! Oh! Fucking carry it, man!